All right, let's call the policy meeting to order. At this time, we'll go right to B, surplus policy. I don't know what that is because when we click it, nothing opens up. So hopefully somebody can bring us up to speed on that.
So if I could, we've been talking about, Joni and I have been talking about a surplus policy, and we've been working on it. We don't have anything definitive quite yet that we're ready to bring to the group, but wanted to put it on your radar that we don't currently have an established policy about how and when and where and through what process we go through surplus and remove things that we don't need anymore. We have certainly been doing that, and I don't think we've done anything wrong. But we're seeking to implement a policy to make things more consistent and predictable, and things that we can share with our community about how and when we're going to be surplusing items the school district doesn't need anymore.
Okay, good, because that was a question I had on something.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Just out of curiosity, did, Dr. Redmond, have you gotten that part yet where, does PSBA have anything already on the books or another school district, or are you sort of
Yeah.
flying?
Yeah, Elizabeth, we're looking at other school districts that have these policies, and we're just working on both and there are, PSBA does not have a good policy. So we're looking at Williamsport and some others that do have the policies. And like I said, we're just kind of tweaking and trying to have a pretty refined policy so that, again, we can be pretty predictable about how we're getting rid of things.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
all right. Anybody got any questions on that? All right. We'll move on to the next item under the independent study.
Yeah, I don't see nothing's in bold, and it was adopted in, I'm sorry, I'd like to just make a comment.
No,
Mr.
go
Chair.
ahead.
Oh, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Just a review.
Oh, okay, so there's no news, no new,
No, if you look in the public comment or whatever it is on there,
Mhm.
it says it's just a review.
okay.
So there were no updates recommended by PSBA from what our current policy was. So we met as an administrative team. This mostly applies to the high school level
Sure,
when students are seeking independent study options. And when we reviewed it with our administrative team, the policy was good as is.
great,
And then we're just looking to sort of refine some administrative regulations about a really clear process when a student wants to request an independent study. What's the process that goes to, the counselor, the building principal, et cetera.
so it's on your radar that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
and I think our process now works fine. We're just making sure that that AR matches exactly what we want it to be consistently across all of our buildings. So, but policy wise, we thought it looked great as is.
Beautiful, so, I mean, technically, it's already adopted, so we're just,
You're
Right,
you're gonna
Just
have to
review.
move it to first read for the
right.
oh,
April
even though
work
it's already
session.
adopted?
Yep, because it's
Yeah.
being reviewed.
Oh, good way
Yeah.
to put it, Patty, yes, okay, good, thank you.
So I'm gonna say if nobody else wants to, that we take it to first read
Mhm.
and move forward with it. 'Cause we're not changing anything. We're just following through with it. I don't know where this whole list of stuff came from today, but boy, we got a lot to talk about.
This is part of our cyclical review. We're in the
Okay.
100s right now, so this is just going down the list.
All right. Next one is current events. If I can get it to load up here.
Dr. Edmond, would you like me to speak to this one?
If you would, please, yes.
Okay, perfect. Like the other one, our administrative team reviewed the current event policy, and the changes that you'll see are mostly to add some specificity as to what is considered a current event. And prior to this, the policy said that a teacher would have to get approval from their department head to
Yeah,
use a
This
current
does sound-
event in their course. And we really thought that was an unnecessary step for a teacher, because if the current event directly relates to the
To
course
curriculum.
objectives and standards, we would like to give teachers the autonomy to use that,
Beautiful.
as long as it relates to the course objectives and content as outlined by curriculum maps. So we didn't really feel like that extra step was necessary for teachers to have to take, because we already have the oversight through the curriculum maps.
Mhm.
So that's really what holds teachers, accountable for the content that they're teaching, is those curriculum maps.
But could a teacher use their own personal opinion in that?
That's a great question, Chris. So below, you'll see, in the last paragraph where it says, in the
Right.
discussion of any event, it used to say a teacher may express a personal opinion, but they
Yeah.
shall identify it as such.
Right.
And we switched that to, they shall act as a facilitator of a discussion in a non-persuasive manner.
Beautiful English.
Okay.
Because what we really want,
Beautiful English.
we want current events to be used for students to, see both sides of any issue.
Right.
And what we don't want is a teacher saying, well, this is the right side. We want to teach kids about, concepts of bias and things like that, and how to look for reputable sources and see both sides of an issue and make their own informed opinion.
I'm all on kids learning current events, but not following fake news either.
Yeah, and that's a hard concept these days.
Yes, it
It's
is.
tough.
That's a hard line.
So what we really want teachers to do is act as a facilitator of discussion, that they're not necessarily putting their opinions and perspectives into that discussion, but it's facilitating that amongst students. So we thought that language was a little bit more appropriate, and honestly protects teachers a little bit
Okay.
more. Because sometimes it's easy to get in that gray area, and we felt like this was a little bit more black and white to protect our teachers and make sure
Right.
that we're
We need to take that to a first read also.
I think it's wonderful. I totally.
Yeah, all
yes,
of these,
I-
Chris,
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
as long as the
Alright.
committee agrees to.
Yeah, Tracy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Next one, field trips. I had a concern in here when I read through this last night. Get it to load up. It is slow today. It went down and we discussed it. The board members don't need to necessarily know if changes are made. And under authority was crossed out and it says the board shall be informed of all field trips approved by the superintendent. Shall consider field trips included. I almost think the board should be informed of field trips and changes. Simply because even though the administration has everything to do with it, when things go totally south, the board is still on the hook. And one thing I hate to do is get questioned on, well, why don't you know about this?
Oh, forget that.
So I have a question on that, if we can at least leave the authority part of it in there.
That's my fault. I didn't realize I had taken authority out. That's gonna be there. That heading is gonna
Okay.
be there. I'll change that.
Yeah, and that first line, I think the board should be informed of the field trip, so that at least we know where they're going or what for.
I think this policy gets a little bit more at the approval of out-of-state or overnight field trips. So previous policy stated that the board approved overnight so overnight and out-of-state. And we administratively felt like the board should actually approve overnight or out-of-state. Because that provides you as board members more information about things that would either be overnight or out of state. Right now it's and we don't have a lot of events that are overnight and out of state. So we actually
Okay.
felt like this pushed more information to the board because it would be encompassing or. So overnight or out-of-state trips would come to the board for
I think
approval.
the
And I
more
think-
information the board has is better
Yeah.
because
I
we
really
have to look
don't think
out.
there's any need for us to be told of every single individual field trip. I mean, the elementary schools go on hay rides, they go apple picking, they go on their end of the year field trips. Unless there's a way, I don't think it's necessary. It's an every year, everyday occurrence. The out of state, the overnights, absolutely. But I just think,
And the reason
think
that
there's
was crossed off, it says field trips approved by the superintendent, which the superintendent only approves the overnight and the out of state. So I
Okay.
think that's why they took it out,
Principals.
because it's put in the wording down below.
Yeah, the principals approve.
Right, like when they do
Okay.
those hay rides and things.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I see Tracy's point. I mean, and somewhere though, I remember we had this discussion like 3 years ago. They started giving the board that one sheet where the people would handwrite on it, like if there was an expense or no expense. And that's something I didn't see in here, that it details that whether or not there is an expense, and if there is, it will be provided. That's
So-
something they just voluntarily do now, but it's not, I don't know if it's in your ARs or,
It is in the ARs, so we have a consistent field trip request form that is either used at the building or district level. So when somebody is requesting an overnight trip or an out-of-state trip, they do fill out that form. So that cost would be a known factor because it's outlined on the form. So whether it's a, hayride or a trip somewhere out of state, they fill out the same information about costs, including substitutes when appropriate, all those things
Right.
Yeah,
that we
it's
have
really-
to factor in.
and also I like seeing them, I mean, I hate to just add something in here, but I love, and I agree with Tracy, no, not the hay rides and things like that, or going to pick pumpkins or,
Right,
but I actually love seeing them in our, board docs for public meetings, because it also, I think it's also good. I hate to use the word PR, but it's good PR. I mean, so anyways, I'm really glad you're redoing this one. This will be good.
mhm.
So
And
under the
then-
required approvals, all that bold was just additional clarity
Mhm,
on the process, which
Very
I think
good.
we were lacking before.
Very good.
Under guidelines of this, the statement parent/guardian has been changed to parental permission. You're taking a guardian out of there, and we do have some students that there's not a parent to give a permission, so the guardian almost has to be in there.
Yeah, I don't know what the
Because you
definition
can have a
of.
legal guardian that's not a parent.
He's on page 3 under
Yeah.
guidelines.
Yes,
Yeah, I was wondering, that's a good one, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Why
think we
parent,
could,
I think we
Yeah.
need to leave guardian in
Yeah,
there.
that would
yeah,
be-
I think that's a good catch.
Okay. Simply because I know several
Oh, yeah.
guardians that are court appointed, so.
Yeah, and
Right.
typically when we do communication, we do parents and
Yeah,
guardians.
it's
I don't
always-
know,
yeah.
I'm not sure why that was there, but thanks,
I just want
thanks
to
for
make
pointing
sure
that out,
Yeah, it
yeah.
just may have
that that
been-
was caught.
It's a
may
good
have
catch, thank you.
I really, that was it that I had. And, under the behavior and participation on page 5, the behavior of students and all that's been crossed out. That whole section was.
So when we met as a team to look at this policy, one thing we wanted to be really careful of is if field trips are curricular, they are connected to courses and learning objectives. What we don't want to do is be exclusionary for any reason. So we do not believe that it's, a good position to take to exclude students for behavioral issues, because that means they miss curricular opportunities. And so there would be a process and some exceptions to
Right.
that. If there were extreme situations, obviously those are handled delicately and, on an individual matter. But we wanted to be sure that all students get equal access to curricular opportunities. and that there isn't any exclusionary practices happening.
I agree with that, but if we have a student that is an issue, how are we gonna handle that if it's not a policy on?
So, yeah, it would be
Yeah,
in the,
ARs.
yeah, it would be in the AR, and honestly, it would be the exact same process we'd follow if a student misbehaved in a classroom here. Because our policies, and handbooks are in effect no matter where physically the student is, if it's a school-related function. So if a
Okay.
student misbehaves on a field trip, we would handle that the exact same way that we handle
Absolutely.
it here in the buildings. So I think that's a valid concern, Chris, of just, things will come up inevitably.
Yeah.
And we are
And they have,
covered by the
Right.
protections of the student handbook, no matter where students are.
Right.
don't mind me as I'm questioning what you're doing.
No,
It's-
no, 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 they're
I'm-
great questions.
I'm thinking as.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really just meant to make sure that all students have access to curricular opportunities.
Yeah.
I
think
do,
there
and-
could be, there may be times like if we found out there was a student on a previous field trip that has caused
Mhm.
issues, and so they've shown that they can't take part in the curricular activities, and we may have to deliver that in a different mode here on school property instead of allowing them to go to that. So we're not ever saying, oh, we're just gonna take everybody, no matter what the circumstance. There's always gonna be specific times where we may have to,
When I went,
Was-
when I went to school, it's like if you screwed up the day before a field trip, you were banned from that field trip, and that was worse than the worst spanking you could get.
And I do think there's, a delineation too between a curricular-based field trip
Right.
and some
Some
of the
fun things.
activities that like senior class trips that are
Right.
taken that aren't
That's a
necessarily
big social.
curricular, they're
that's not
more
learning
social
stuff.
and class-based. So
center.
I think, a trip to Hershey Park for a senior class, yeah, absolutely.
different,
If you have behavior issues, that's a privilege,
Right,
not a right.
they need to know they're gonna be held responsible.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yep,
Okay.
I think we're on the same page
Yeah,
there.
we got,
Next one,
Oh, so
I'm
first read.
sorry,
Oh.
Chris. If we make those changes with taking the strike through out of authority and then putting the parent guardian, are
Right.
we okay to move that to first read?
yeah, I'd be all right. Is everybody else okay
Mhm.
with that?
Yep.
Absolutely, they did a great job.
Keeping the guardian in there?
Yep, yep.
All right, so we'll move that for first read. Extracurricular activities.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
This is a policy we don't have currently. Because it doesn't say when it was originally adopted. That's my first question, but I just want to know
Thought
the
it
history
was.
real quick.
Yeah, I was wondering where it came from because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, just take your time, please.
And like Tracy said to me earlier, this whole list has been put together for us to update all policies, but like this one here, I could find nothing on it.
There
It
is-
was
is
adopted
in
August
the,
4th,
Yeah.
2016.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is one.
It is in
Is
the
there?
active policies.
Oh,
I
it
don't
is,
know
I'm
why
sorry.
that date didn't pull over.
Okay, but it is the
with
same
it,
text
but-
minus the bolds.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, and really, the only thing that was changed there, you'll see, is just further defining extracurricular activities because the language was a little ambiguous in the previous policy. So we wanted to specify, the athletic activity, ensuring that there's clarity that this policy is actually covering the athletic side of extracurriculars.
Anybody else have any more questions on that one? Guess we can move that to first read, Patty.
Okay.
Next one, number 5, policy 123, interscholastic athletics.
pronoun change that he, she thing. They show up.
I'm trying to
I
show.
tried to find them all, Elizabeth.
They do, they pop up. They're like these little things you can never get rid of.
If I missed any, please let me know.
Has
And-
everybody, go ahead, Mike.
So I was just gonna say, similar to the last one, it was just a further clarification on interscholastic athletics, because that wasn't in there before, so it was just adding that as a point of
I
clarity.
saw a thing, it's on page 2. it said it complied with the requirements of the athletic handbook and it got changed. Should the athletic handbook still be open for that, for the students or no?
So the reason that we changed that was because currently our practice is to have a curricular or co-curricular, extracurricular and interscholastic handbook that encompasses all three of those things.
Go to
Okay,
one place.
Because it's
One
all
place.
in
We
one
talked about
place,
that.
no matter what type of activity it
Mhm.
is.
All right,
So we didn't want to put athletic handbook and cause any confusion because that's not what we call it.
okay,
We call it that really long name of co-curricular, extracurricular and interscholastic handbook. So that's the reason for that.
anybody have any questions on anything else in that one?
Just the page, I mean, it's not critical, page 3, under guidelines. That first line, I don't know if that, under guidelines, the first line,
The male, female
Yeah,
athletic
I don't-
activities report.
I don't know if, I mean, really don't care, I'm sorry, that's the wrong way to say this, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that that's the way you folks want it to read, okay? It's not a huge issue. It's
That's
not
a
an issue
Title
with
IX.
me.
Title
Nine
It's
thing,
Title
it's all
IX.
Title
Yep,
IX.
right.
That's
So
what
yeah,
it's-
that has to do with the reports from Title IX and how we have to report to Title IX.
Okay, all right, I
Right.
just want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're all, okay, because that might come up somewhere. Thank you so much. Good. Good job.
Everybody good with that one? Let's move it out, that up for first read.
Mm-hmm.
Policy number 6, policy 123.1, concussion management.
So the changes that we're making on this one are really down at the end on the
Mhm.
penalty.
Mhm.
Right.
And we just, we didn't believe that since all the coaches have to go through training and we're going through medical professionals for our concussion management, we felt if someone, a coach or someone was violating the concussion management protocol, then we don't need to warn them. We just need to hold them accountable for putting kids in harm's way.
Absolutely. As a paramedic, past paramedic, I totally agree with that. I don't think you should have to warn anybody. The kid's safety comes first and foremost.
And we did add that or medical professional because that also includes athletic trainers and anybody who wouldn't be considered a coach. We felt that point of clarity was important too.
That's
that It's not
excellent.
just the coach, it's also the trainers, it's also any overseeing medical professional.
Now, can I ask this, the coaches and stuff that you're talking with medical training, are they first responders, EMTs, paramedics, or are they just trained in CPR and first aid?
A lot of them are trained through, so they do certificate programs on a
Right.
number of those things. So CPR and first aid, I'd have to check with Dave. I don't believe that they have that hands-on certification because there's usually an athletic trainer at all events.
Okay,
But it's more of how to respond in situations. That's the way they're usually trained to get the right people there. Do they do stop the bleed, use of the?
Right.
Yes, those things,
Defibrillator.
but not necessarily the in-depth training that
I was just curious because being somebody that's dealt with hundreds and thousands of cases of concussion management, want to make sure they're doing the right thing because just a wrong movement
Right.
can make things go south. That's why I was curious if they had certain certifications or not.
Nah, most of them are just advised to take extreme caution when something occurs, like be overcautious when there's something that's a head injury to that
Right.
effect. So somebody gets hit with a baseball, hit and wobbles, just you set them out, you get a medical professional to, adhere to them and talk to them about the situation. And so that's the basis of it, right? So they take the cautious part, get the right people involved and move forward with it because
Okay.
they are not medical doctors. They are coaches
Right.
and they're trained to at least take the most caution as possible on an event.
And I
like
believe
this.
their training includes like signs and symptoms, of
Signs and
concussion,
symptoms are
like
the main-
when to
that's-
recognize it.
Sure.
And then what's the response when you recognize it
Yeah.
is alerting. them.
Yeah, cause I didn't agree with the first, second, third
Mhm.
violation. You should have mud.
Yeah.
Kids come first, I'm
Right,
sorry.
absolutely.
And we just felt like with the research that we know about concussions and the importance of that, it's too important to.
Okay,
We did
anybody
provide
else
any-
got anything on that?
No, happy to see it.
Let's move that one to the next read. Now, this is gonna play into what we were talking about a minute ago on the sudden cardiac arrest. Everybody should know what to do when that comes up. And I guess that kind of falls in line with everything we were doing before. The electrocardiogram testing, are you guys saying with that they should have a test done before they're into some of the activities? Down on page 2.
Not that they should have a test done, but we need to communicate with parents about, as you're seeing in the delegation of responsibility, it's our job to make sure that the symptoms and warning signs are known by everyone, including the parents.
Right. I agree with that because I know of a case right now where a young man is having some severe issues with cardiac. And he has to just not do anything now. He's restricted. And as the same one, like down at the bottom on page 2 of penalties. Yeah, the first, second, third should be taken right out the window.
Absolutely.
There's no excuse for not paying attention. Everybody good with that one?
Absolutely.
All right. Patty, that can go to first read. Next one, alternative instruction.
This is another one of those that we're not doing any updates, just review.
Just saying that we reviewed it.
Mhm.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Next one, number 9 on the list, policy 125, adult education.
Same thing again, no changes, just a review.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that?
It's
This is going easier than I thought it was.
Oh, yeah, no, these are, yeah.
Should've said that.
Number
Wait,
10.
that Title I
There's
policy,
always
it's
one.
pretty controversial.
Number 10, policy 918, Title I, parent and family engagement.
So federal programs actually requires that we review policy 918 yearly. So that's why you'll see it's a 900 amongst the 100. So it's not part of the cyclical review. It is a yearly review that we do on this parent
we
family
have to
engagement
do.
policy. So that's why that's on here today. There are no changes, but it is a requirement for our federal programs that we do a yearly review.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
You know, I mean, I'm not saying any change or anything, but I found this really interesting and I know it's part of the federal thing, but I just found this interesting on page 2. Under the first section of delegation of responsibilities, we have 1 through 5, then we have 1 through 4. But then when it says 4, I've just found this sentence, at a minimum, parents and family members shall be expected to. Which means not, should, but they shall, and that's really powerful. There's no way to enforce that, obviously, but I was pretty impressed with that anyways. They use the word shall quite a bit.
It's definitely our goal to increase family engagement every time that we can, and I think we always have some good conversations about ideas of how to do that more effectively. And I think this policy just backs any, work that we do in the future
Yeah,
as
the
well.
more we engage parents, the better we are.
Absolutely.
Anybody have any more questions on that?
No,
All right,
easy peasy.
section D, there's nothing. So anything for the good of the board that we're talking about? Anybody got any thoughts?
Well, I know we've talked about this before, but I'd really like to request this go back on the agenda for next month, because I don't think it's not gonna be, we're not gonna have an opportunity in the very near future to address this, and it's just a noun discussion, policy 005 for next month. And let the board then look at it during the work session. Just a noun discussion.
What is it?
To discuss removing ex officio to changing the noun to ad hoc.
Don't the
Okay,
zeros get discussed at the board retreat?
Yes, but we said it for years now, and we just haven't had an opportunity because so many different things come up. But this really isn't I mean, for us to sit down together and go through all the zeros, it just seems like this one is so simple. This way they can look at it, during the work session. And if they choose not to move it forward, they choose not to move it forward, but it's been on the radar for a while. Doesn't seem real difficult just to have a quick discussion and decide whether or not they want to change it.
okay, I think we can add that to next month's. Anybody have any concerns on it that it can't be discussed or?
Well, thank
Alright,
you.
We'll put that on for next month. Anybody have anything else for the good of our group?
No, just very happy we have, no, seriously, I want to thank you guys and Randy. No, this is my favorite committee.
I'll forewarn you, you have a long list next month.
Well, are these gonna be reviews or are these
A mixture,
meat and potatoes?
a mixture.
Okay, well, I like a little meat and potatoes. Not a
But
lot, but a little
We should
bit.
be through the 100s though by then. so.
That's great. Well, we appreciate it.
Alright. I'm gonna call the meeting adjourned, but I'm gonna ask Mr. Randy there. Can we ever get this clock fixed?
That's in every